Do you think it's good to have lots of friends? Now, I like being alone. When I was young, I thought it was good to have lots of friends around me. But as I grew up, I realized that most conflicts in interpersonal relationships arise from people close to me. So I ended up living alone without friends. I found this to be a good thing. If you want to live a happy retirement, if you want to go through life without feeling alone, it would be good to know this. We feel lonely when we live our lives alone. As we reach middle age, our friends quickly diminish as each of us walks at a crossroads in our lives, so there is no need to talk about old age. So, as we grow older, we can't help but feel the desire to be with our children. However, even if we live with our children, loneliness can actually increase. Have you ever wondered how long your family spends together in one place? Do you spend less time together? So, as we age, we need the ability to live alone. There are many people who say that it is actually easier to live alone. The same happens with a 70-year-old grandmother who returned to her hometown after a long time and started living alone. She lived with her husband and had 5 children. However, her husband, who was a fisherman, had an accident while on a boat. He became brain dead and returned to a vegetative state. My grandmother was just taking care of the house, but suddenly she became the head of the family and had to take care of her 5 young children while paying her husband's hospital bills. So, she woke up early, went to work, which was at a fish market. She cut fish and washed dishes. His eldest son was good at sports, so his teacher wanted him to go to a championship in another city, but the good son, who knew the family's situation, gave up on his dream. The son must have known the painful feeling in his mother's heart at not being able to support her children. He said, "Mom, it's okay. In this situation, it doesn't make sense for me to say that I will continue to exercise. My goal is to graduate from school quickly and raise my younger siblings. I will earn and pay my father's hospital bills. I hope to grow up quickly so I can help my mother." On the one hand, this eldest son was very comforting, but the only thing the grandmother could say is this. The son's mother said she was sorry, but the son actually reassured his mother like this. Each person's situation is different. So Mom, don't feel sorry for me. I'll hurry. I will take care of my younger brothers who are going to graduate and make things less difficult for my mother, you understand. And his son graduated from high school and got a job at a nearby factory. And he gave all the money he earned to his mother, so that my grandmother could breathe a little. She was very grateful that her son had kept his promise. Since you started earning money, our family's situation has improved a lot. Mom now sleeps longer. Without you, Mom would have to live on the street with her younger brothers. Yes, the burden is less on Mom now. I am really happy. I also feel very happy to be able to earn money. My grandmother was heartbroken to see her oldest son earning money while sacrificing himself for his younger siblings, but she was proud and grateful. It must have been a very difficult life, but they were living well, trusting each other, and one day she received good news. The son said, "Mom, I'm going to meet a woman. I think I will probably marry this person soon." The woman lives in a city close to their neighborhood, and he met her while working. She is young, beautiful and kind, so he thought he could marry someone like her. The eldest son, who had been a strong pillar of support and for whom he was both grateful and remorseful, announced that he was getting married, and she had no choice but to agree. Soon, the eldest son brought home the woman who would become his daughter-in-law. The grandmother got married young and, from the first meeting, she wondered if her daughter-in-law would feel uncomfortable. The grandmother took very good care of her daughter-in-law. Fortunately, the daughter-in-law who came to greet her for the first time liked her grandmother's cooking and spoke very well. As her son said, she was a kind and beautiful young woman. However, strangely, after he got married, his attitude changed completely. For example, when her son was with her, she behaved well and worked diligently, but when he was away, she lay on the sofa and was busy using her cell phone. The grandmother, however, never said anything to her daughter-in-law. The grandmother's husband, hospitalized for a long time after suffering brain death, ended up passing away. Grandma could have seen your face and held your hand, but she remembers the difficult yet peaceful times they spent together, walking through the world, giving birth and raising their children. Without understanding her feelings, her husband passed away, and her grandmother held the funeral. The remaining children grew up, went to live as monks and got married. Now, the grandmother lives alone peacefully, while the eldest son lives alone. He was worried and suggested they live together, but the grandmother immediately refused. She had been bothered so many times by her daughters-in-law that she was fed up with it. The daughter-in-law suggested living together at her grandmother's house with her own money, through their son. However, the grandmother refused, understanding her daughter-in-law's feelings and knowing how painful the conflict between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law was. The daughter-in-law came to visit her grandmother with her eldest son, and they tried to persuade her to live with them. The grandmother continued to be persuaded to live with them, but she resisted. I really liked living alone. So they suggested selling the house they were now living in and moving to a bigger place where they could all live together. As long as everything was fine with Grandma, she would always be welcome. Finally, the grandmother agreed, thanks to her daughter-in-law's sincere persuasion. She saved all the money she had, including insurance money, money from the sale of the house, and emergency funds. The grandmother moved to a new house in her son's name, without a single penny left. However, the reality in the eldest son's house was very different from what the grandmother thought. The daughter-in-law became a completely different person, treating her badly. He asked if she had cleaned the bathroom well and complained about anything. He claimed to have an appointment with a friend, left his grandson in the care of his grandmother and left. The daughter-in-law ordered her mother-in-law to do everything, from cleaning to cooking. It was as if I didn't have a maid. At first, the grandmother was grateful to live with them, so she helped her by cleaning and washing clothes, but as the days went by, the daughter-in-law's attitude became worse. Grandma didn't say anything, she couldn't do anything. With the insurance money from her husband's death and my grandmother's estate, the couple moved into a large, luxurious apartment in Seoul, but the grandmother wasn't too happy with the benefits. Still, she didn't say anything. June was the eldest son, who helped her in the most difficult times of her life. The grandmother dedicated the rest of her life to her eldest son, who sacrificed himself for the family. She only felt sorry, so she couldn't bear to say anything bad to her daughter-in-law. The mother-in-law raised her grandson and let the grandmother do all the hard work. Sending Seon-ju to kindergarten and bringing him home was also the grandmother's responsibility. Now the grandmother is older and cannot move her body freely. Ha Ji-han's daughter, the mother-in-law, could no longer see, and one day she said this to her daughter-in-law. However, the daughter-in-law's judgment must have been distorted from then on, and now she expresses her dissatisfaction in a blatant manner. She started talking loudly to herself, as if she was telling her grandmother to watch and listen to her, until she realized that her grandmother was home. Since she worked at least 10 hours a day at the company, it was hell for her grandmother to stay at home, but when she didn't speak until the end, her daughter-in-law was so upset that she came to her grandmother's side and said, "When did you get old? You will simply die." This is for the children, but the mother doesn't even know about it. She doesn't know, so she lives at her children's house like this. The daughter-in-law's cruel attitude left the grandmother alone. Even when she sleeps, she hears auditory hallucinations and her daughter-in-law appears in her dreams. One day, the grandmother was taking care of her grandchildren. He tripped and fell, feeling pain in his left ankle, knee and pelvic bones, needing to lie down for a while. As a result, he became unable to carry out household tasks. From that moment on, the daughter-in-law's mistreatment intensified. The grandmother was so upset that she cried alone, thinking that maybe she would die this way. Determined to reveal her daughter-in-law's true identity to her children, the grandmother began recording the mistreatment using the cell phone that Changnam had bought for her. A month later, she shared the recording with her son. All the children gathered in the eldest son's apartment. The grandmother cleared her voice and said, "I put up with it for a while, because I didn't do anything for you, but now I can't take it anymore. Listen carefully to what that bad person always did to me." The grandmother looked at her cell phone as she shared the story. The daughter-in-law responded rudely to the recording. The grandmother expressed her opinion about the longevity of the elderly, suggesting that the best path would be to live a measured life and then die. If it were her, she would simply enter a nursing hospital alone, taking care of her daughter-in-law in the same way. I wasn't sorry about making that decision. It didn't take long for the daughter-in-law's cruel verbal abuse while her grandmother lay in bed to resonate in the room like a bomb. Even after the daughter-in-law's voice on the recording ended, the room remained silent for a while. The children were deeply shocked. The eldest son, especially devoted to his grandmother, was so shaken that he was unable to say anything in the face of his wife's constant change in behavior. The brother immediately divorced that woman. They sold the house again and received the money from the mother. The amount of money given to the daughter-in-law was more than 10 million won. People try to forget loneliness by getting drunk, but loneliness is a romantic memory in itself, so you can laugh. Solitude and virtue appear similar on the outside, but they are completely different on the inside. As we grow older and live in the world, we become islands. As we move away from greed, envy, jealousy and violence, we become floating islands without realizing it. As we age, we all become islands. Even if 10 million people live together, if they are alone, they will become 10 million islands. Maybe one day, someone will suddenly feel this way. Never tried it? Life suddenly becomes empty, the clogged heart seems about to explode, the feeling of not being able to say anything, and tears for no reason seem to want to spill. So you want to meet someone, but when you do, there is no one to meet. No matter how much he reads his notebook and cell phone contact information, he can't find anyone to meet. He didn't even make promises to anyone, but he lives in a world where he lives alone in the wind. There was a time when friendship was love, living wonderfully and giving meaning to it, but in reality, we met and separated due to each other's needs. It hurts a lot because of the scratches each one inflicted on the other's heart. Where in this world will there be someone who will laugh and cry with us without the greed and altruism of this world? As we live, one day, when we are suddenly alone, there is no one to know. As people, the older we get, the more we find ourselves. Face loneliness head on, face yourself head on. But loneliness is like a lonely and withered leaf, unable to share it, so sadness increases. The reason why you can't see the loneliness of others, and can't completely convey your loneliness to others, is something common to all people in the world. Isn't it because the color of loneliness is different and the sadness of loneliness is different? We want someone to know us, but there is no one who will. It's very sad and difficult, but in reality, who else knows us besides ourselves? That's why we're alone. Wouldn't it be a pastime to enjoy time alone, leaving aside the noise of the busy world? From then on, wouldn't our solitude become a romance with solitude? Then we have loneliness and the fear of being alone inside. How can we turn loneliness into something romantic? Generally, people who have worked in an organization all their lives and then retired have a hard time knowing what kind of life they want to live on their own. They continue to hesitate about going somewhere alone, eating meals, and watching movies alone. Traveling could make them feel lonelier or, even worse, inadequate, like they were incompetent. This was why they didn't separate from their spouses or continue talking to someone. Therefore, they were unable to fully enjoy freedom. It came from loneliness. Basically, if they wanted to enjoy being alone, the most important thing was to have an or not mentality. They could not remain completely alone if their decisions were influenced by other people's decisions. People who did not feel lonely, even though they lived alone, did not have their decisions influenced nor their excitement broken by other people. In a word, it was disappointing. Not because there wasn't joy in being free and not having to worry about others. So people who get along well with themselves don't try to get along with everyone in their relationships and don't try to be accepted by everyone. They recognize that everyone is different, and if they don't fit in, they recognize that too. If in life they meet someone who is not compatible with them, if they realize that they are being ignored or that the other person has no intention of listening to them from the beginning, they do not try to force communication and let it pass in silence. Of course, this quiet time will be beneficial. There's no way around it. Sometimes it may seem foolish that they can't do anything when they are ignored, so they try to act strong by force, but when they look back on the years they have lived, they realize that there were more times when these relationships were confusing. So, first of all, they avoid these relationships as quickly as possible. If possible, they try not to express the unpleasant emotions that arise in the other person, they just let them pass for now. It may seem frustrating at first, but when it happens, they focus on those negative emotions. They change their mood by thinking positive thoughts or doing things that make them feel good. Why not try? Humor is like driving a car. When they drive for the first time, they consciously operate the steering wheel, accelerator and brake, but when they get fully used to it, it becomes a habit and they are able to operate the car skillfully without consciously thinking about it. Therefore, the same applies to feelings. It may be difficult at first, but if you keep practicing to let go of negative emotions, you will eventually feel more positive. Then, if you think about it later, you will realize that if you hadn't been silent at that moment, the situation could have been worse. They may be thinking, if they no longer want to be recognized and understood by everyone, naturally, they don't need to meet other people's expectations. As they don't want recognition, they pay less attention to others. So why not focus on themselves? They pay attention to what they like, what they don't like, and whether they are satisfied with what they do. How are you feeling? If they are in a bad mood, why are they feeling bad? They think about what they can do to feel better when this happens. They do something that makes them feel better. And sometimes, even if they do this, the thirst to be loved and recognized by people increases and steals their inner peace. They think this way. Look, don't give up on hobbies and learning. On the internet nowadays, we come across many stories of elderly people who live happily on their own, reaching the age of 100. And look, I brought some articles from people who might be useful to you. I'm approaching 65. I decided to start learning piano because of Corona and now I'm playing Cherny Aji. I have a cat, so I don't feel alone, even if I don't have friends. Oh, and listening to lectures on Chinese characters on YouTube fills my days, so I'm very happy. In my 70s, if I think about it, since I was 30, I've almost never made a new friend or met a friend. If I go out with a classmate, he acts like a bird, the one who just wants to show off, the one who just complains, the one who just wants to drink. You know, if you're talented and have a solid hobby, making a friend is actually a hindrance. 9 out of 10 conflicts in human relationships arise because of the people close to us. As we grow older, our friends become fewer, our bodies begin to age, and due to the stress and wounds we receive in our lives, we give up on life, and our range of action decreases. However, as we get older, it is better to take up a hobby. It's best if it's a hobby you can enjoy with someone. A common hobby can be the most natural channel of communication. So, if there is someone who doesn't have a hobby, from today onwards, when you do something, why don't you think about whether you feel happy? Some people I know say that now that they're done raising kids, they set aside every Wednesday as a day just for themselves, and they don't do anything that day. They do what they like, eat what they like, and enjoy their golden years. Why not try to spend a day just for yourself at least once a week? If you don't have a hobby or want to find new joys in life, why not visit a local center near you? People often say that old age is unhappy. What is the reason to think? Is it due to weakening physical strength, the inability to enjoy pleasure, and the awareness that death is imminent? On the one hand, this is true, but it seems to be a little insufficient for determining old age. Many elderly people around often express these ideas. Some believe that as they grow older, they would automatically understand the meaning of life. However, even after turning 60 and past 80, they say they don't know what life is like. As they grow older, they become more uncertain, and it is disconcerting that the world sinks into an unpredictable darkness. However, there is something that accompanies aging. They say that the wisdom to distinguish between important and unimportant things in life, between right and wrong, gradually grows and finds a place in one's life. What was so precious in youth, at some point, is displaced from its place, and small things previously considered less valuable occupy their space as precious things. Only when we get older do we realize what are the truly valuable things in life. Do you remember the island mentioned earlier? Even if 10 million people live together, if they are all alone, there will be 10 million islands. The author dares to think that, as we are so many islands, the wisdom accumulated throughout life is invaluable. So, if we were a lonely island until yesterday, why not start today and become lonely beacons on our islands? Even in the night sea, where sometimes a violent storm threatens, with the experience of survival, we resolutely maintain our focus and become light with our entire being, never truly alone. The lonely lighthouse stands on the edge of a cliff again today, in the vast expanse of sunset. Where will you go when darkness falls? Should we go? Lights come on here and there, struggling to find the way. Then the countless juniors in life who follow as we float on the vast distant sea will see the bright lights of our struggle. On the other hand, what can be done at this age? The question may arise, how can my old experience help me in this era of rapid change? However, just like us, they will face similar challenges. When I was young, I lacked ideas, but as time went by, I realized that the best thing in the world was to cross the sea of suffering. Gradually, I began to reflect more seriously on life. What if there is a ray of light that illuminates the dark sea? What if countless lights from each island illuminate the sea? I don't believe the wisdom of life is that difficult or profound. Each person has their own, and just by showing that they are enjoying the rest of their lives, my children can become a path forward for young people. Just as the world was made to follow the path set by the pioneers, they will be able to help their elders, even in the face of great difficulties, sadness, and despair. By looking and learning from the path they have taken, they will be able to maintain their hope and courage in life. I believe they can become lighthouses. Lonely beacons that illuminate places where my children and younger generations cannot see. So I wanted them to be that kind of lighthouse, a solitary lighthouse facing the choppy sea at sunset.